Here is one of a series of talks by spiritual leader Lola McDowell Lee, spanning 2 decades from the early 70s through the 90s. Lola was a Zen Roshi, whose Rinzai lineage included Dr. Henry Platov and renowned Zen master Shigetsu Sasaki. Lola was a religious scholar as well as an ordained Christian minister. While the talks are focused mainly on Zen and Buddhism, Lola drew on many spiritual traditions, including those of Jesus, Plato, Lao Tzu, the Hindu Vedas, Meister Eckhart, and Gurdjieff.
Continuing. Pitiful are people who do not know Nirvana and its eternal felicity. How they grieve at life, death, and mutability. Shakya and Amida too were originally human beings. Have I not also the form of a man? Wonderful indeed, the lotus flower of the law. However many ages may pass, still that same color. The crescent moon becomes full and wanes, and nothing is left. But still, they're in the dawn, the crescent moon. Whenever we see them, all are just as they are. The willow is green, and the flower is red. We labored with this last week, and there came about out of it the question of who am I? When you sit all alone, in your meditation with just that, who am I? Now, all alone, I said, then it can be rather frightening. This all alone, that means you've dropped your world, all the things that you usually cling to, and there you are all alone, totally alone. No matter where you turn your head, you can find nothing. All alone. Now, the accepting of that aloneness, which to some is so frightening, that aloneness, but the accepting of that builds a great strength. Plotinus called the whole thing the flight of the alone to the alone. This consciousness here is alone. The consciousness that we call God is alone. There are not many. So it is a flight of the alone to the alone. To find that alone and accept it. It will give you great strength. Here in this world, you know where you live. You know the address of the house or the apartment. And you know your phone number. And you know your wife or you know your husband, as the case may be. And you know your son or you know your daughter. And you know your father and mother. And you know what school you go to or you went to. And you know to what religion you profess to follow. But in all of that, do you know you? Do you know what you are? In most places in this world, they say the important thing is to know God. In a great many places in this world, it is only important to believe in God. Never mind knowing. You know, lazy people believing. But 2,500 years ago, there came this man whom they called the Buddha, and his teachings transformed the quality of religion. He made man important. If man is to know God, he first must know himself. And here the Zen people come along many years later and say, and from the very beginning, nothing is lacking. All that is necessary for you to know yourself, and then the ability to know God, is right there, right now. You have always had it. It is the capacity within human consciousness. So man doesn't need to look to the heavens, said Buddha. He is to become a light unto himself. Jesus tried to convey this also, you know. He said, man is born. He has come as a light into this world. This light is shining in a dark place. We have this treasure hidden in this earthen vessel. And St. Paul says, God commanded the light to shine out of the darkness. The light that lighteth every man that cometh into this world is the very core of your life. Everything revolves around that, for without that, you would not be in existence. And we forget this. Over and over and over we forget this. The great essential of our life is forgotten. Like an old shoe. Just forgotten. When this Buddha appeared on the scene, you know, he's a very pragmatic man, you know. He said, you know, you don't need to worry about God. You don't need to worry over God. Let him worry about himself. You know, see? If he wants to know who he is, he can ask, who am I? But you find out who you are. And in this trying to find out, I think one cannot help but find out, to realize that a great deal that we believe about God is of our own creation. When we were children, we were told about God. You know, we went to Sunday school, most of us did. And so today we have people that are 40 and 50 and 60 still holding the same picture of God that they formed when they were 3 and 4. A childish 4-year-old God is their authority. It doesn't seem possible, does it, in this day and age, but it is true. So, I mean, one should look at one's concepts. You know, what you believe and what you think, you know, you do. You act upon it. Your whole life is built on it. Certainly you should look to see if it's a 4-year-old authority or a 10-year-old authority or a 20-year-old authority, or just what is going on here anyway. Something else I think that we should realize, that just believing, you know, people believe, just believing, it is a blind faith, just believing. And that seems to them, it seems to make life so simple. If I could just believe, my life would be so simple. Now, just believing to make your life simple can also be an effort of avoiding yourself. It's escaping from yourself. I believe. That's all I need to do. Shut the door on everything else. And so we create a lot of fictions. We create fictitious problems. And fictitious problems can be very easily solved. Any solution, any answer that satisfies you at the moment will do. Yeah. But you won't know yourself any better, nor will you know God any better. No. It's like they say in Zen, it's putting on hats on top of hats, on top of hats, on top of hats, on top of hats. All this window dressing. And so humankind has become interested in pseudo-problems. And they mull over them, and they ponder over them, and they spend hours analyzing, you know. And they think because they do this that they're great seekers. How many angels can dance on the point of a pin? Theologians have agonized and suffered over this little question throughout all the long ages. How many angels can dance on the point of a pin? What's that got to do with anything? And the Buddha, you know, he hit this kind of thinking very hard, shattering that kind of identity, the identity of being a seeker, when all they were doing was posing problems of fiction. Posing problems of fiction and then having an answer which satisfies you is sort of clinging to the seeming reality, the seeming security of the ego. Now, it has been noted by psychologists, so I have read, that in times of anguish, great anguish, like miseries, you know, wars, things like that, people begin to think of a little more seriously about abstract things. They think about God, and they think about truth, and they think about heaven, and they begin to think about an afterlife, you know. And usually we find immediately after and during a war, the so-called esoteric, you know, the psychic phenomena phase, it sometimes goes as spiritual, and also they have all these seances, you know, and this greatly increases People get religion. Either they're looking for something different than they had before. And because of war or some such catastrophe is a great upheaval on many levels. War acts like an impetus. During the years of World War II, there were more inventions during that period of time than there were before in the 50 preceding years. It is an impetus to everything. See, it's a growth of a kind. And with all the parents losing their boys and the women losing their husbands and so on, they say, oh, well, let's try a seance. Maybe we can make a contact. And they're all while trying to understand how it is that God could allow such a thing to happen in the first place. What kind of a God is this that I've believed in up until now that could let me suffer so? Poor me. Well, we don't have to go to a psychologist as such to know that this goes on. We can look at our own personal experience. When we're in pain, in misery, we begin to look for something more, something on a higher level, as it's called. We look, isn't there somebody out there somewhere in the heaven that can come and take care of this ouchie? Well, it ouches, it does. Yeah. But when we're happy, we don't care about God. You just simply don't remember. You just simply don't remember. And this whole process is so simple, we don't need any psychologist to observe us and tell us, We know it. We see it going on inside of us all the time. What does this say to you? It must say something to you. Well, it could be simple, When you are in anguish, you want to avoid the anguish. You don't want this. Ouch. And so you call on God. After all, if you can't cope with it, it's got to take a great big power to do it. And who else but God can cope with the situation? And this has become a great occupation. God as an escape. See, we didn't remember. Not really. Because what about poor God? What about his situation? All kinds of people all over the world praying to him and shouting at him and pleading with him, all under the various names by which he's known. Maybe that's why he has so many names, The Sufis, speak of the 99 names of God, and then there's a real one which nobody knows. See, he hides behind that. After all, we look and we listen and we don't hear him. It could be that God is not the problem. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe the problem is man. And to solve the problem of God, I've got to look at me. You have got to look at yourself. There was once upon a time a monk asked his teacher, he happened to be Ummon, And Ummon was in the Obako sect. Ummon's teacher was Bokoju, and his teacher was Rinzai. Obako sect is not much in Japan anymore. It's the old thing. The Kancho, Kajuri Kancho, was in the Obako sect. Anyway, this monk asked his teacher Ummon, what is it that surpasses the Buddhas? What is it that surpasses all the patriarchs? I could ask you, what surpasses God? Ummon answered, buns. Buns. Bread. Buns. Well, stop and think a minute now, huh? The Buddhas and the patriarchs and the gods, they are abstract. They are things of the mind. But buns are real. Buns are bread. Buns are earnest. They have a simplicity, and they're complete into themselves. Have you got such completeness as a bun? Yeah. Jesus taught us to pray, for our daily buns. Huh? See, this is the spirit of Zen, making humor out of it, Buns are also the spiritual body of Christ, broken up. Buns are something which these marvelous gods and sages and patriarchs and Buddhas and so on are not. We can be humorous with it. And that humor is the art of living in this world. The Bible says God is love, right? You're going to put that in a box and say, that's the love that I have, that's for God. But that love should include the earth. It includes the sky. It is the love of nature. It is the love of buns. It is the love of ourselves as we are part of nature. When we simply choose this, and we choose that, and we choose this, and we choose that, they call that half-gods. It's not complete. So whatever it is that comes your way, whatever comes your way, take it, swallow it, assimilate it, for God offers it. God offers himself in it, and God is in your taking it. Let's not just leave it here in the head. It's buns. It's eating. And there was a monk who asked his teacher, what is the meaning of Daruma's coming to the West? Then the teacher replied, we see the mountains in the sun. Yeah. Daruma's coming to the West usually means the birth or the beginning of Zen. For Daruma, is Bodhidharma. Hmm? When Bodhidharma came to China, the world of Zen began. And in Zen, when one knows Zen, I mean, just because you know a word doesn't mean you know Zen. But when you know this jewel in its purity, so then we say we know Zen. In Zen we find the proper seeing of the mountains bathed in sunshine. And there was a man by the name of Shiji. He lived around 550, and he was the founder of the Tendai sect in China. He said there were 5 periods to the Buddha's teaching, and that there are the 5 sutras to correspond to these different stages. So this teacher, and again it happened to be Ummon, he asked the head monk there at the monastery, "What sutra are you lecturing on?" And the monk answered him, he says, "Well, I'm lecturing on the Nirvana Sutra." And Ummon says, "Well, now, the Nirvana Sutra has the 4 nirvana virtues, doesn't it?" "Mm-hmm, it has," came the answer. And Ummon then, he picked up a cup, and he held it up in front of this monk, and he says, "How many virtues has this?" "None at all," said the monk. "But the ancient people said it had, didn't they?" asked Ummon. "What do you think of what they said?" And then Ummon the cup, and it made a sound. And he said to the monk, "Now do you understand?" "No," said the monk. "Then," said his teacher, "you had better go on with your lectures of the sutra." Yeah. Now so you understand a little better, let us say that the 4 nirvana virtues are immutability. In all this change, there is something that doesn't change, ever. There is joy, there is personal existence, and there is purity. These are the 4 virtues. And we have in this a problem of value. So we look then at the European school, and we find they have 4 values also, but their values are religious, moral, aesthetic, and intellectual. When it comes right down to it, in looking at the 4 nirvana virtues, again, immutability, joy, personal existence, and purity, Ummon believes in one virtue only, and he practices just that. It is existence value. The existence value of each and everything is infinite and equal to every other thing. Nothing is more important than something else. Everywhere it is equal. Existence value is very accessible. This immutability, the joy, the purity, the existence, very accessible in this ordinary, common, everyday life. So he uses a cup to preach with. And his hymn of praise, then, is that note when he strikes the cup. Huh? It is existence which is divine. This we forget. How many times a day do you remember? This existence is what I really want to know. So we have this. Pitiful are people who do not know nirvana and its eternal felicity. How they grieve at life, at death, and mutability. People suffer because they have forgotten the core. They have forgotten the hub around which their whole lives revolve. They have forgotten the presence that lives within them. Now, here in this place, we are concerned with meditation, the bringing out of this presence, this modality of being, which then is expressed in various situations. For this presence transforms whatever it touches. If there is movement and this presence is in it, the movement becomes a dance. If there is stillness and this presence touches it, it is like a living sculpture. If thinking and this presence touches it, one knows the higher reaches of intuition. If in sensing, have a cup of tea. See? One merges into the miracle of just being. If speaking, it becomes a prayer, or it becomes poetry. Doing the things of ordinary life becomes a ritual, becomes a celebration of existence. And this is what Zen is always trying to portray in its seeming nonsensical anecdotes. The very presence of the One here, remembered. We have become entangled with the 10,000 things. They seemed new. You know, you can walk through a garden every day, and you forget what is in the garden, because it isn't new. Just think that if you lived out in the desert or in a cave somewhere, and suddenly one fine morning you woke up and you stumbled into this beautiful garden, would you go through the garden the same way as you go through your everyday yard? No, you would dance through it. You would sing in it. You would have such joy in it. And in that moment, that inner chattering would stop. It was just the enjoyment of this garden that was so new. But see it today, and see it tomorrow, and see it yesterday, and it's so ordinary. You forget. Now remember, amongst other things, the contents of the psyche are, in some instances, considered a garden. We have lovely flowers in there, we've got weeds in there, we've got all kinds of things in the psyche, It is a garden. It is my garden. How often do you remember your garden? How do you pass through that garden when you wake up? How do you pass through that garden when you go to sleep at night? You're going through it. Huh? What is your attitude toward yourself in going through a garden of this kind, of this nature, huh? And then, what is your attitude toward meditation? Remember, attitude in meditation is important. Also, this forgetting and this remembering is the story of the prodigal son. One son leaves, one son remains. And the one who remains cannot understand why the fatted calf is killed for the roaming brother. The one who forgot and remembered. We just don't have time to remember. No. There are so many new sensations waiting. It's like little 2-year-old David exploring the world. It's all new to him, exciting, Why should he remember who he is? Except, and we're exploring a world, huh? He's exploring a world. Exploring a world with what? We have time for movies. We have time to play cards. We have time to gossip. But for meditation, well, it just doesn't seem to fit in, huh? We've got time to fight. We've got time to be angry. Time to go to a football game. We got time to read the newspaper. We got time for TV, but no time to sit. Maybe because we do not have the time to remember, maybe what these people are saying is that they're not really interested in themselves, for themselves. They're not interested in sitting silently for just 1 hour. Why? I can go to the store in that time. I can do 1,001 things in that time. How will they ever know? How could they even ever guess, at what grace can arise? They're too busy. They don't know the benediction that waits for them, huh? They don't know that life can have a new color and a new depth. No, but you know what they're doing at the same time? They don't want to do this. They run around begging and pleading and asking for happiness. Forgetting. Have a look within. Just have a look within. Who knows? Maybe Jesus was right. Who knows? Maybe the Buddha was correct. It has been said that whoever looks within has found without any exception. And anybody who only has looked without has not found without any exception. Now, Soto Zen, has a basis in this belief. Just sit and you're already enlightened. It is that if you really look within, you will find. However, let us not forget, there is a process that one must go through. One must remember back to the source. And that means going through a garden to get at the roots. To search for what is real, it seems so arduous, Well, I could say that's a cop-out. It is simply an attitude that one has toward life. So let us not work so hard. Let us create a synthetic, artificial, plastic self. The ego is a substitute for the self. It gives us a feeling that we know who we are. The problem is that this pseudo-self needs constant attention. It needs to be supported. What is real remains of its own accord. The real cannot go away. There is no way, nowhere that it can go. It just remains unmoving, quiet, silent. It sits there. It doesn't need your support. It is your ground. Remember from whence you came. But you know how we are? We have a little sum of money in the bank, and we want that sum to grow. Of course. I mean, I'm not saying this is not good. It's good. Grow. Put lots of fertilizer on it. Grow, grow, grow. People having a certain prestige, they try to increase it. It's puffing up of the ego. If you stop puffing, it dwindles. It's like pedaling a bicycle. You have to continuously pedal or you fall off. And so we pedal. Pedal, 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 pedal. Never stopping to see what is, never trying to remember. And the problem is tremendous. Here, all this pedaling to keep this ego in this nice position. Nice and friendly and happy, and don't get sad on me, I don't know how to cope with it, And all of a sudden, one day, you're going to find yourself dying. How can you support something? How now are you going to keep on pedaling? It's come to a close. You can't pedal anymore. Oh, I wish I had done something about this when I had the opportunity. Too late. Death destroys the ego. That kind of identification, The thing is, death cannot destroy you. But do you know this? I mean, really know it. Not believe it just because somebody said it. Know it. You must. Stop pedaling and remember. The ego is afraid of death. The ego is afraid of living. And so we manipulate. We manage things. We need 1,001 props and still the fear, because life goes on changing. It is mutable. These three, they create anguish. Life, death, mutability. The world of 10,000 things is nothing but change. That which never changes is deep within. It's never affected by any change. Not by time, not by power, and not by prestige and not by money. It always remains transcendental. It is a something within that is no bigger than a mustard seed, which is pure life, which knows nothing about death. It will never die because it was never born. You must come to understand this about yourself. This little mustard seed is pure love. And somehow, we are afraid of love. We're afraid of life, we're afraid of death, we're afraid of change. Whew. Oh, what a way to live, huh? And so we accumulate all these props, and we cling to them, and we won't let go. Look at some of these props next time something happens, Most of the props we have, we don't need. We have them to impress others. And many of the people that we're trying to impress, we don't even like. It's like the two cows that were grazing in a pasture alongside a highway, and a milk truck drives by. On the side, on the panel of the truck, it was printed, pasteurized, homogenized, grade A, vitamin B added. And one cow turns to the other and says, makes you feel sort of inadequate, doesn't it? Wonderful indeed, the lotus flower of the law. However many ages may pass, still the same color. This is the flowering of the Dharma, the law. This flower, which is now a bud, let it grow. It will be the same color for you as it has been for all the Buddhas, for all the patriarchs. Yeah. The crescent moon becomes full and wanes, and nothing is left. But still, there in the dawn, the crescent moon. We come and we go. Millions of people have come and gone. Many more millions will come and go. We're mutable. Huh? We are. The eternal life remains the same. Just what it is. Mutability, like the moon swells and swells and swells until there's a full moon, and then it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller until one night it just disappears. Do you think that the moon appears or disappears? The moon remains the same. Yeah, just as it is. In the Upanishads, and then I'm going to quit, there is a story of two birds living in the same tree. One bird sits at the very top, high branch, and it sits there very quiet, silent, unmoving. The other bird is on the lowest branch, and he hops around on these low branches, jumping around, hankering for this flower and hankering for that flower and wants that fruit and competing with this and jealous of that and greedy for this continuous restlessness, Gets a little tired now and then, so that slowly, oh, so slowly, the restless bird becomes weary. And one day he looks up and he sees this other bird, so silent and so calm. And this restless bird becomes attracted to this magic, silence, and starts moving as best it can to the upper branches. The remembering has begun. And it comes closer and closer and closer until there is only one bird.
And now, may the peace and the power that passeth all understanding hold us and keep us in the love of the Christed consciousness while we are seemingly separate one from another.
If you find Lola's talks valuable, more will be posted in weeks to come.